From West Virginia, Mr. Mooney is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. In the aftermath of the market volatility in January, Acting Secretary of the SEC, Allison Heron Lee, released a statement saying that the SEC would quote, act to protect retail investors when the facts demonstrate abusive or manipulative trading activity that is prohibited by federal security laws. So my question is for Mr. Pivovar, will you discuss the types of fraud that are currently prohibited and detail the breadth of securities laws that govern manipulation and false statements?
Thank you, Congressman, for that. I'm not sure I can address all of them in 5 minutes, but I'll maybe give you an overview of some of them, right? So one is, you cannot trade on material non-public information in the breach of a fiduciary duty. So that would be insiders having information that they are using to disadvantage retail investors. You cannot engage in manipulative trading activity, and that can take the place of doing, for example, the typical pump and dump schemes, where people put out into the marketplace and the internet, wherever, false and misleading information that would paint a rosy picture of a particular company, trying to increase the share price after they've already bought the securities. So they pump up the securities and then dump their shares at the high price, and leaving retail investors holding the bag afterwards. You cannot engage in other manipulative trading activity. In the case of very high frequent trading, you cannot do spoofing and those sorts of things to give the appearance that you're providing liquidity and pull that away in order to induce traders to trade in those sorts of things. So there's all kinds of different securities laws that protect investors. I will also note that the SEC's enforcement division has a specific enforcement group dedicated to market abuses, and it's one of actually the most effective and most productive enforcement teams at the SEC in rooting out these abuses. You're on mute, Congressman.
Sorry, quick follow-up, Mr. Pivovar. You indicated in your testimony that you have confidence the SEC is well equipped to identify and act upon market manipulation as it relates to the GameStop case. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. For the reason if one, they have the authority to do it, and two, they have an incredible enforcement staff, particularly the market abuse team is very good at looking at these. There's not only the enforcement staff in Washington, D.C., but also 10 different regional offices across the United States are looking into this.
All right. Well, I just want to say, listening to the interviews from some on the left, you might not realize that the SEC already has the tools to go after market manipulation. Instead, you would hear accusations from those from Senator Elizabeth Warren that our capital markets are rigged for the rich and powerful. If anything, GameStop case is an example of how lots of small retail investors can bet against a large hedge fund and win. It's not a rigged market, it's a free market. So when I hear some of the so-called solutions offered by my friends, my Democrat colleagues that they put forward, I'm reminded of the quote from the great Milton Friedman. Many people want the government to protect the consumer. A much more urgent problem is to protect the consumer from the government. So as we hear these proposals from Democrats on these panels, I think we should ask ourselves, will this actually help retail investors? A couple questions like, would really restricting or banning payment for order flow help retail investors that benefit from no commission trading? Would a financial transaction tax benefit the retail investors that would be forced to pay it? The answer to both those questions is no. So instead of using January's market volatility to advocate for new legislation, we should allow and protect investors from these attempted, going to fail so-called solutions that will do more harm than good. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Torres, is now recognized